Hello and welcome to Convenient Deceptions with your host, Davina. It's just me chatting, and today I want to look at the fact that the Supreme Court has now supported coercive prayer by allowing for a coach to be reinstated who's lying about what he did following a game. He says he prayed in private, but he didn't. He prayed with people, with students on the field, and was retaliative towards those who didn't join him. So the Supreme Court is now feeling confident enough in itself and its removal from accountability to disregard the facts of a case and push ahead with fervor and enthusiasm for achieving as much of a Christofascist theocratic agenda as possible. I hesitate to use the words Christofascist, and when I interrogate my own motives, I wonder, is it because I am so conditioned with that idea that Christians must be good and don't offend Christians by pointing out that some Christians are quite fascist nowadays and have been for some time, and we are merely seeing the low-lying fruit of their endeavors with more to come? Or am I feeling bad because maybe I don't need that much denunciation in a single term? Maybe I can just say Christian extremists. Can I though? That's up for debate. Let's look at this article I wanted to put up because it's about no exception laws with regards to abortion and how once they were too harsh for Republicans, but it's become a race. You know what happens when people start being competitively pious? You may have seen that before. That's what's happened to Republicans now. And in 2019, apparently, a small group of extreme anti-abortion activists called on the party to renounce its decades-old view that laws restricting abortion in the US ought to exempt victims of rape and incest. Kevin McCarthy said at the time that it went too far to support absolute abortion bans that did not offer protection to women and girls who had been raped or who were the victims of incest. And that's because at that point there was a consensus in the Republican Party that you don't punish women, you don't force women to go through what is a marathon of endurance. Pregnancy and labor vary in terms of consequences for women, but they can be life-threatening consequences. They can be extremely arduous. And extremely arduous is for most women. Most women have to suffer through at least some degree of morning sickness that may be relatively restricted to first trimester, but often extends beyond the first trimester, as well as some people experience extreme physical hardship and softening of tendons and pelvic pain and all manner of things, to say nothing of labor and how difficult that can be and how women can die from blood loss and how a lot of women in the United States don't have reliable, easy access to prenatal care or an obstetric care. And our species has evolved to have large brains contained in thick skulls that are difficult to expel through your vagina. As a woman who's given birth vaginally twice, I can say that it's a challenge. I didn't even have an epidural because I think I was a bit more hippie at that point and had a phobia of spinal injections, I guess. Not a pronounced phobia, but a preference. It's hard, particularly the first time you do it. It's hard to give birth. So I wanted to touch on this particular Republican who changed party. So his name was Jim Hendren. He's a retiring state senator from Arkansas. He left the Republican Party after the January 6th insurrection and is now an independent. So he said he was proud of his long history as a pro-life forced birth legislator. He said Arkansas had, until now, always passed legislation with rape and incest exceptions. He said The fact is, it's a different ethical dilemma when you're talking about a 10-year-old girl who is a rape victim being responsible for the actions of a criminal versus someone who is responsible for their own actions. Now, that's funny because in his framing, yes, don't inflict the consequences of pregnancy and labor and the rest of your life caring for a child if you've been imposed on by a criminal, violating your bodily autonomy. But he's happy to say women have to be responsible for their own actions if they've fallen pregnant outside of rape or incest, which is interesting because even outside of rape, coercive sex that falls short of meeting a legal definition for rape, but is purely men pressuring women to have sex with them, men pressuring girls to have sex with them, that is often a precursor to pregnancy. There's lots of ways to keep a woman happy and satisfied without having penetrative penile vaginal sex. And women are often slightly more aware of the consequences, although in areas where physical education classes are frowned on and abstinence is taught primarily as how to go about contraception, then yes, perhaps both women and men, or girls and boys, are ignorant of how conception occurs and ignorant of effective measures you can take to prevent pregnancy. There's always higher rates of teenage pregnancy in states where abstinence is endorsed as a method as the sole topic of instruction on the topic of preventing conception. People need information. People do better with information, typically speaking. Anyway, so back to Jim Hendren. He said, after years of closing every other loophole, suddenly the discussion changed. You get to a place where there is nothing else to do. Oh, that's the door. I'll be back in 1 second.
Where's your sister? She's sewing that garage job. Oh, don't go.
Mommy's doing a broadcast. So if you...
I'll close the door because...
Oh, thank you, Mom. All right. I have an audience. Yes. So Hendren, Republican state senator, who's now an independent state senator on his way to retirement, he noted that Arkansas had one of the worst infant mortality rates in the United States. He ultimately voted present on a bill that had no exceptions for rape or incest. So whilst he drafted an amendment that would have included a rape and incest exception in the legislation, he didn't even put the amendment forward for a vote because he said it didn't have enough support. And because even Republican legislators who quietly supported him and agonized over their vote, they were fearful that in supporting the amendment, they would then be labeled pro-choice by Republican primary challengers. So I want to talk about that just to say, look at the trajectory of this political momentum for Republicans. Trump radicalized the Republican Party. So they already were radically anti-democracy in America, but it wasn't as visible, and it was certainly easier for people to entertain convenient deceptions about the Republicans' true agenda. Oh, they just want to protect the unborn. Oh, they're not antagonistic towards women and their bodily autonomy. Women can exercise bodily autonomy just by saying no to men who want to have sex with them. Yes? You lost? You left it at your friend's house?
I forgot it.
That's okay, because guess what? She's still your friend. And you'll see her again.
It's just a good excuse to go to her house.
Yeah, or invite her here.
And ask her to bring this.
And then ask her to bring
That's a
her
good
back.
excuse to see her again.
It is a good excuse. Mummy is doing a live broadcast. All right, and I did promise that I was going to talk about Bremerton, so let's get that up on screen as well. I did touch on it briefly to say, yes, coercive prayer
Mommy,
is not cool. Yes, darling?
I got some stuff for you.
You got some stuff for me?
Here's what Livy gave me. First of all, she gave me.
Oh, that's a glue gun.
And it's
It's glue gun sticks. We don't have a glue gun, but okay. We can get a glue gun.
Oh no, you don't have to have a glue gun.
Oh, you can just melt it?
No, it's not for being a glue gun. It's supposed to be wand.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
And can I tell you what else she got?
Yes, what else did she get?
Okay, so I also made this map. I made it.
You made it.
And she gave me this.
What a great time
You
you
can
had.
make something out of this.
Beautiful.
I added a few details.
You did. Very colourful, very attractive. Thank you, darling. Do you want to make, if you get a piece of paper.
I'm going to unfold this.
I know, but
Right now it looks like a feeling, but I want to show you something. Look, when I unfold it, you'll see it's a Wolf World map. And I made a little map.
I love it. Was that your friend's idea or yours?
Mine. Wait, oh, I have a podcast?
I am on a
I
broadcast.
made fake names. I'm so glad I did Kitty because then that's my podcast.
Yeah, fake name. Broadcast name. That's very good.
It's me and my friend.
Okay, Pumpkin, can I finish the broadcast?
Just got horrible mommy.
I know that. Okay, when I finish the broadcast, I'll talk to you. Let me be very clear about this. Very clear. All right. So the real problem in the school prayer case, Bremerton is the name of the school. It's not that the coach wanted to pray. It wasn't even that he was doing it publicly and had people on the team join in, although that is problematic too, because then that's social pressure to join in with prayer, to intimidate people who don't share that religion or those religious convictions, or could even be atheists and have no religion. I feel like you're cutting things in a way that's designed to be threatening. Why are you cutting things? You start a different map because I'm going to teach you a trick to put lemon juice on the paper and bake it in the oven so that it looks like an old school pirate map. That's a good trick. And we're going to do that. That's going to be next. But you'll need to find a piece of paper. So it should have been an open and shut case, argues Matthew Chapman, who is a journalist who writes for Raw Story publication. So his lawyers lied about it. I've forgotten what his name is. Let's find out the name of the man who just won his case in the Supreme Court. Coach. Joseph Kennedy, who knelt on the 50-yard line after games. Okay, so the reason this matters, says Matthew, is that a public employee religiously coercing people is still ostensibly illegal. Yay, that's a good thing. But this court, the bad thing, essentially just gave public employees a green light to religiously coerce people and then lie that that's not what they're doing and have their actions protected. In other words, the court encouraged people who can think of a plausibly deniable way to coerce religious practices on people over whom they have authority. That's what the Supreme Court did. Embolden people. In the same way, Trump emboldened a lot of covert racists to become overt racists, or just a lot of racists to find each other and celebrate with each other and magnify the the sentiments in their heart that rely on the worst impulses of human nature, that involve a perversion of our ability to care for each other and our ability to form social groups. because it's in-group, out-group impulses. We have an impulse to go, yay, family, protect family. Yay, community, help community. Yay, society, vote for good democratic governments, vote for good governance, work to bring about infrastructure and things that benefit our nation. And then species solidarity, to say the human race, let's solve problems that are affecting people all around the planet. So that's examples of in-group solidarity. Fascism is just a political strategy of harnessing people's ability to get stuck in dysfunctional in-group, out-group patterns, and to say, oh, it feels good to denounce an out-group, makes you feel safe, like you're going to harden your resolve to protect your in-group by clarifying who belongs to that out-group and how terrible that out-group is. So Trump, stereotypical fascist strongman, was clear in saying things that gave a permission structure to his followers to hate, to identify, to despise an outgroup of inauthentic Americans. Yay. Authentic Americans, he tapped into people who already felt a strong sense of grievance, that their dominance in society was being eroded and diluted, that whiteness was being diluted by racial intermarriage, by migration of people from non-white countries. They were afraid that the identification they had of in-group superiority was being whittled away. And whether they were wealthy or non-wealthy, nobody likes loss. So those people who had an unhealthy attachment to a misbegotten sense of superiority founded on their skin color and the historical tendency of people with that skin color to oppress and exploit people of other skin colors. They may have inherited wealth directly from that practice, or they may have just inherited those ideas after inheriting citizenship, birthright citizenship in a country that has collectively benefited from the amassing of wealth at the expense of exploited and demeaned people of a certain skin color. People brought to America from the continent of Africa. All right. And the people who did that, exporting, importing, and then exploiting of forcibly detained and imprisoned and enslaved people, often developed a shell of religious justifications around that to conceal the immorality of that practice. And I'm not speaking of immorality in a religious sense. I'm speaking immorality in a purely humanistic sense. Out of in-group solidarity to humans, I say it is, yes?
This part, still have this part, but the white part I colored.
That's beautiful. Did you find one? I think there's white paper in that drawer there. That one. You don't want to do it? Yeah, nearly. Okay, so wait. The coach, John Kennedy, retaliated against those who didn't join in. It's a coincidence because John Kennedy is also the name of a senator from Louisiana, a Republican senator from Louisiana. But the coach, John Kennedy from Bremerton, 2 players testified, according to Matthew Chapman, that players who didn't join in tended to get their playing time cut. And Judge Gorsuch...
I don't want.
What, darling?
I need to get up.
Sweetie, do you need to go upstairs for a little bit to hang out by yourself? Please don't try to boss mummy. I did tell you I would come play with you soon. Okay? I'm glad you had a good time at your friend's house. You can finish reading your book. You can go upstairs. You can go set a timer on your iPad if you like for 10 minutes. I can set a timer here. Okay. There we go. 10 minutes. But don't disturb me again, okay? Because I love you, but I want to finish this. Did you finish that book before? I'll log it on your reading log if you want.
No,
You can have $2.50 from if you draw the picture. Remember in the special log they gave you?
I'm gonna just.
Okay. All right. So Gorsuch claims that the coach offered his prayers quietly while the students were otherwise occupied. Does it look like the students were otherwise occupied? No, it doesn't. So if Neil Gorsuch was able to say the students were otherwise occupied while the coach prayed quietly, that is some evidence in pretty stark contrast to that claim by Supreme Court Justice. So when a Supreme Court Justice is confident enough to lie in the face of incontrovertible evidence like that photo of all the players, what appears to be all the players on the team, or at least a substantial number, it's like 30, more than 30 players there. He's very confident at lying, because I imagine that evidence would have been offered, as well as the testimony of the two players who testified that there was retaliation. If you didn't join in with the prayers, those players who didn't join in would tend to get their playing time cut. And it's the reason why a coach leading prayers, notes Stephen Zilke, is so unprofessional. They can claim that they don't have influence, but they do. And if they respect diversity and plurality, they protect players. So that is what happened today. A school has fired a coach for disrespecting diversity and plurality, for disrespecting America's tradition of multi-plural democracy, of having religious protections for religious diversity in the First Amendment, so that you don't have to have a state religion. America is not a Christian country. America is a country where an oath is sworn to the Constitution, which centers in its First Amendment freedom of religion and freedom of expression within limits. And so the coach who disrespected diversity and plurality by using social pressure and the implicit threat of losing playing time, using that threat of loss and the implications of not being part of in-group solidarity to in furtherance of his view of America as a Christian nation. He, as a public school employee, has acted as if America is a Christian nation with one religion, and that to fit in, to be a team player, you have to be Christian and join in with Christian prayers. And that is the point of view that's been upheld by the Supreme Court today. So not only has Christian religious views been imposed on the women of America through the stripping of federal protections to abortion access, because that's an expression of some Christians' religious belief that life begins at conception, whereas in the Jewish religion, life begins when you draw breath, when you have left the host body of your human parent, your female human parent, or your trans male human parent, because diversity and plurality are cornerstones of civilized nations, and the US was able to move away to a degree from the practice of slavery while still retaining those political millstones around its neck, namely the electoral college system, which entrenched a weighted advantage to white rural votes as part of a promise to balance out the growing political power of abolitionists at the time of America's founding. It was like a promise. Don't worry, they won't get so powerful that they can force you to give up your slaves and your illicit, immoral earnings from the practice of cutting labor costs by owning your employees rather than paying your employees, and separating their family members and treating them unconscionably. The fruits of that, we're not big in terms of character development, but we're big in terms of money. So early America prioritized the generation of wealth over the generation of conscience, over the growth of conscience. And they promised to balance out the political power of abolitionists in states that relied less on agriculture for profit generation. And the Electoral College is the fruit of that compromise and that appeasement to the engine of America's early wealth generation, the practice of slavery and all of the slave adjacent industries. Russian missile strike hit a shopping center in Kremenchuk, Ukraine, which may have killed, an estimated 1,000 people were in the building at the time of the attack. Meanwhile, leaders from the G7 nations meet in Germany, where possible further actions against Russia are expected to be discussed. That's a shopping center, eminently relatable to people from a developed nation. So far, I think it's confirmed that 8 dead, 21 wounded, including 2 children. And President Zelensky says that, yes, Russia has become the biggest terror organization in the world. Russian attack in Kremenchuk is one of the most outrageous terror attacks in the history of Europe. That's fair. Russia is an instigator of terrorism, and Republicans can try to distance themselves, but their potential candidate for 2024 and their Republican president of 2016 to 2020 sought to ingratiate himself with Vladimir Putin, didn't call him out, looked subservient and crushed in the infamous meeting with Putin in Helsinki and joint press conference before the world. President Trump was beholden to Vladimir Putin for his election victory in 2016 because of all of the millions of dollars invested by Putin in campaigning for Trump and against Hillary Clinton, and also campaigning for Bernie Sanders in order to inflame tensions amongst Bernie Sanders supporters and dissuade them from casting a vote for Hillary Clinton in that incredibly consequential 2016 election. And as a consequence, Trump was able to appoint an unprecedented number of justices to the Supreme Court, resulting in the extremely undemocratic outcomes we've seen, the extremely counter-majoritarian outcomes we've seen. And by counter-majoritarian, I mean minority group pleasing results, displeasing a majority of Americans who support abortion, who support access to abortion for women, who don't want America to be divided into the haves and the have-nots of states where you can or can't access abortion, who just want women to be centered as having legal standing over their bodies, so that if they require chemotherapy treatment for cancer and they're pregnant, they're legally allowed to terminate their pregnancy and proceed with the treatment they need to enhance their survival prospects. If a woman's psychological or physical health is threatened by pregnancy, if their educational future is threatened by pregnancy, America until now allowed women to make that decision. I've inadvertently fallen pregnant. I can choose to not go ahead and bear a child that I am not ready for. And the state making those decisions from women is that's an example of government overreach to force gestation and birth upon people who would choose to reject it if they had safe access to do so, and will still continue to choose abortion even when it's not legal anymore. They'll just be in more danger from back alley abortions, from unregulated abortion providers, and back to the days of women administering concoctions to themselves. Although Merrick Garland has said that he will seek to protect women's ability to legally access mifepristone, the abortion drug that you can typically obtain by mail. So that's going to be in opposition to Republican governors. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem said, yes, that's the time. So I'll say goodbye now. Kristi Noem said she's going to try and outlaw that. But anyway, thanks for listening today. I appreciate it. And I hope we're all motivated to learn more about how America actually works so that we can effectively counteract the rise of religious extremists who have achieved the ability to impose their will on non-religious extremists. Thank you. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye.